Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 9.3, My Abyss. We are back. Hello, Darnell.
Hello. You guys have no idea how much I've been...
This guy's down bad.
Aetheral Space. I'm down so bad.
I've done it to him again.
He's done it. He really has this time. Honestly, Aetheral Space, kind of peak fiction. It's like Hunter x Hunter in space, but also topical and fun, and it just has everything I love. I can't tell. I'm starting to wonder, it's obviously a great series, that's indisputable, but I'm starting to wonder, is it really the best web serial of all time, or is it just so specifically catered to my exact taste?
About half an hour ago, he was singing its praises.
No. Don't get me wrong. This is one of the best web serials, but I'm wondering now. I'm almost wondering if I'm blinded just by how much it appeals to me specifically. If that's clouding my judgment.
Well, you are my intended audience at this point, so.
I really sometimes I'll be I wish this happens, and then Tan does it, and I'm like, the son of a bitch has done it again. And so often he predicts my thought process in the writing. It's just oh my god. I need to shut the fuck up and read. We're already a minute in. Okay.
What happened last time?
What happened last time?
Okay.
Oh, motherfucker. Okay, last time, the Apex Bishop, whose name I forgot at the moment...
Giovanni Sigma Testament.
Nice. He killed all the Cardinals and was like, I'll be taking over the Superbian branch now. And then in Arc 2, Dragon was like, why are we going on board this Eliza ship? And Skipper was like, there's something I made there. And then it camera panned and Musashi was like... there, and he's like, I will also
he'll be on the True Meet, which is when all their ships actually physically dock together into a hole.
I also came to a realization. I need to share this before we read. I know we're almost 2 minutes in here, but the fact that the Gene Tyrant rule is known by the 9-inch by 9-inch rule means that the Imperial system has won throughout the universe. Somehow it made a comeback, so good job for America. Huge W. Thank you, Tan.
New version of All White Giver, it's Musashi on Panacea.
I need that animated, the Musashi staring with mouth open and falling to the ground. Yeah. All right. Now we're reading. And in that moment, when I reached the peak of Mount Pilto, I was reborn. It was so perfect. The snow beneath my feet, the sea of trees that spread out before me, the clouds swirling through the sky. Even the tweeting of the birds, which had irritated me moments ago, now seemed magnificent. It was like the entire world had been arranged just for that one transcendent moment. I knew, then and there, that all the assets I'd spent my life to accrue were nothing more than worthless numbers. This view, this existence, was the true treasure. Everything I could see was why, and it always had been. Even the reflection of it in my eyes was why itself. Memoirs of David Har Malcroft, former Humanist Apex Bishop. Atoy Musashi was in search of an abyss. He put the glass to his lips, gulping down the drink like he was a drowning man. It burnt at his throat on the way down, but it was a good pain, like he was being punished for his inadequacies. Slowly, surely, with each drink, he could feel the coherency of his thoughts coming undone. That was good. That was what he was here for. This is breaking my heart. Knowing Musashi as a character driven to alcoholism is the saddest possible thing. You're fucking me up already. We're not even a page in. He was sitting in a little bar right at the bottom of this little makeshift city the True Meat had brought together. Cheap lights in the ceiling dimmed and brightened nearly at random. But nobody who came here did so for the atmosphere. And it seems very few people came here to begin with. It was just him, the bartender, and a couple of drunks animatedly ranting at the establishment's only table. Another one? The bartender glanced up as Musashi tapped his finger against the table. You sure, pal? I'm sure, Musashi muttered, already extending a hand to accept the next glass. He took it eagerly as it was extended. He was almost there, he felt. He was almost free of the hellish place his mind had turned to. With each gulp of rancid alcohol, he was slowly breaking through a wall, getting closer and closer to the void on the other side. It would be a gentle place, he knew that. A place where the sorrow he was feeling would simply become nothing. There would be no emotion, no memory, no pain. Just himself, free from it all, staring into a reflectionless mirror. Just himself, not having to think of her face anymore. He went to look to his side, only to stop himself. He'd seen nothing there but an empty bar stool. She wasn't there anymore. The rest of the drink went down in 3 long gulps, and yet his mental disintegration still eluded him. The abyss he was looking for remained just as far away as ever. He was still here now, feeling these things. Words cut through the space, momentarily distracting him from his thoughts. "I'm telling ya!" one of the drunks behind him suddenly called out to his buddy. "It's Gene Tyrants all the way down!" Musashi quietly put his glass down. The drunk's friend, only marginally more sober, snorted in amusement, leaning back in his chair. "The hell are you talking about, man? You're wasted!" I'm telling you! The drunk continued, adjusting the black beanie on his head. "If you follow the facts and retrace the evidence, it all makes sense." "How's that? We beat them in the war, right? Killed them all. Or did we? That's what they wanted us to think." The drunk waved a finger as if he was imparting great wisdom. "But what they actually did is they transformed. And now they're still ruling over us. We just don't know it. It's messed up." The friend furrowed his brow. "What? So, all the guys in charge are the Apex Bishops? They gotta be Gene Tyrants. Let's start there." The drunk began, counting off on his fingers. "That council the UAP's got going on? You know they're Gene Tyrants. The Supreme? Gene Tyrant. It's messed up. They got us in their clutches, and we're pretty much slaves, so, My boss stifled me for my bonus this month," the friend chuckled. "So you're saying he..." "Oh," the drunk nodded sagely. "Definite Gene Tyrant. In fact..." "Why," Musashi growled, swaying slightly on his feet, "are you speaking about things you don't understand?" The drunk and his friend looked up. Musashi had stood up from his stool and walked over to their table, where he was now looking down at them with a thunderous expression. Even with the drinks he'd had, his movement had been so quiet he'd gone undetected until he'd spoken. The drunk's friend swallowed cautiously, shifting in his seat. "Kind of a private conversation, buddy," he said, voice low. Musashi ignored him, his gaze remaining fixed on the drunk. The drunk just glared back up at him. "We got a problem, pal," the man said. "Why don't you mind your own business?" Musashi ignored the question. "You don't know what you're talking about," he repeated, swaying slightly on his feet. "None of you. You just keep going on and on. Why?" Well, the drunk chuckled, exchanging a glance with his friend. "Sorry if I offended you, buddy. You a humanist or something?" Musashi stared. "What? UAP then?" The drunk clearly didn't know when to keep his mouth shut. "Little far from home, aren't you?" Musashi glared. The drunk's face darkened. "Supremacy?" he said, his voice suggesting he'd already figured it out. Musashi blinked. The drunk's chair screeched as he got to his feet, squaring up with Musashi, perhaps just an inch or so taller. He thrust forward with his hands to shove the special officer, but Musashi did not budge. Seeing that this attempt at intimidation was not working, an unsightly sneer wrinkled the drunk's nose. He turned and returned to his table. "Supremacy, cunt!" he muttered, and he spat at Musashi's feet. The movement was instantaneous. In less than a second, Musashi had seized the drunk by the back of his hair and smashed his face against the table, blood and teeth scattering across its surface. The drunk's friend staggered back, falling over his seat and collapsing to the floor. An incoherent whining sound trickled from the drunk's broken jaw, like a slowly dying pig. But Itoy Musashi was not done yet. A blazing anger like a star, targetless, had consumed him. As he pressed the drunk's face against the table, the light of a thruster blazed out of the back of Musashi's hand, slowly increasing the pressure between the man's face and the surface below. Crack, crack, crunch! Slowly, inexorably, Musashi could hear the drunk's already broken nose fracture further as it was pressed tighter and tighter, closer and closer. It was a sickeningly satisfying feeling. And so Musashi just stared down at him, like this moment of petty vengeance was the only thing that existed in the world. He ignored the thrashing of the drunk's limbs. He ignored the screaming of the drunk's friend. He ignored the commotion from outside, from the passing pedestrians who were witnessing this sight. But when the bartender slammed a fireball bat against the back of his head, catching him off guard, he could not, of course, ignore that. Everything went mercifully black. And yet, it was still not the abyss Itoy Musashi had been looking for. Malfi Root, green grace, and even a few fledgling apex trees stretching lazily up to the ceiling. Mila recognized more than a few of those plants as she walked through her apex bishop's garden. The bright lights above gave a decent impersonation of the sun, and she could hear the occasional tweeting of birds as she walked down the footpath, but Mila saw no signs of human life. A twinge of annoyance curled her lips. She'd spent months trying to arrange this meeting. The least they could do was actually meet her. For what it was worth, she wasn't too sure how this massive garden, taking up a massive chamber right in the center of the menagerie, gelled with the tenets of humalism. Humalists like them weren't supposed to make anything new, only recycling that which already existed. But how did growing plants factor into that? She supposed the seeds already existed, but it still felt like a loophole. Well, whatever. She'd never considered herself especially devout, and she wasn't here to question the Apex Bishop's devotion. Mila turned the corner, and there, finally, was the woman she'd come to meet. The Apex Bishop of the Humanist branch of the Final Church, Gertrude Harth. The scurrant woman was sat at an antique table, sipping a cup of tea, wearing a dress that honestly looked like a half a dozen burlap sacks had been stitched together. Bizarrely enough, she seemed to make the look work. Gertrude lowered the cup from her mouth, gently pulling it back down on the saucer with a kick. Her feline ears, perched over her brunette hair, twitched as she addressed her visitor. No. No. You did not make your cat girl an old grandma, did you? Tanhony?
I did not. Read on.
I don't believe you. Mila Green, isn't it? She said sweetly, cocking her head. Though she didn't have the age for the role, her mannerisms gave off the impression of a kindly grandmother. Ooh, false alarm.
Close shave.
Mila nodded respectfully. Fuck, what was Mila's voice again? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I'm surprised you remembered Mila, to be honest.
Yeah. I remembered them because Corgo said that they were very fond of Mila, and I was like, oh, lock down my memory. That's right, ma'am. Gertrude
maybe a little bit less perky, I would say. She was a bit more dour from what I remember.
That's right, ma'am. Gertrude gestured towards the empty chair with a hand, her furry tail swaying in the air behind her. My people tell me you've been asking for this meeting for a long while. Please, sit down. She did as she was bid. Mila was here to make a request, and she wasn't going to put that in jeopardy by being unnecessarily confrontational. Can I offer you some tea? Gertrude asked, steepling her hands beneath her chin as she looked Mila up and down. It's Margrave. Lovely jubbly. The pleasantries had to be observed, but Mila couldn't help but feel like they were slow knives as she nodded. She was uncomfortably aware of just how sweaty her hands were, sitting opposite this woman. People called Gertrude Harth the cat, and it wasn't just because of her appearance. It was the way she looked at you, played with you, like a cat toying with a mouse. With every honeyed word she spoke, you couldn't help but spot her fangs. Gertrude made the tea quickly, grinding leaves together with a mortar and pestle she had on hand. The tea that resulted was a pale red, bubbling slightly from the heat. Mila tasted something like strawberry when she raised it to her lips. So, Miss Green, Gertrude smiled. I understand you want to talk to me about Helga Malwarian. Mila wait a minute. I did not remember Mila. I thought this was the girl that was related to Sigma guy.
No.
This is the girl from Arc 2.
This is, yeah.
Oh, shit! It's the doctor!
Yes.
Oh, shit! She came back! This is the same feeling as in One Piece when, when the hypnotist and that, one sergeant come back, 100 chapters later, and they're, both in the Marines now. It's that same vibe. Mila stiffened, but she actually wasn't too surprised. The humanist Apex Bishop was decided by majority vote, and it was rumored that Harth had achieved her victory through copious amounts of blackmail. It was no surprise that she had such accurate information on others. I'll be honest, I did not expect Mila to make a comeback of all people. Holy shit. Wow, Good Day was right to take notes. She nodded. That's what people sometimes need to understand, Gertrude gently interrupted, is that necessity often trumps what's right and what's wrong. Please, though, go on, dear. Gertrude Harth's gaze was like a magnifying glass incinerating an ant. Mila swallowed, steeling herself before she continued. I believe the time has come to release Helga Malwarian, or at least to change the terms of her punishment. Right now, it is cruel and unusual. The cat cocked her head. Cruel and unusual? How's that? Forgive me if I'm wrong, but hasn't Malwarian been unconscious since she was brought in? I'm a little confused. How can someone be punished if they aren't aware of anything? She's been kept unconscious, Mila forced out. That in itself is the punishment. Hardly cruel and unusual, then. Gertrude sipped her tea. Fairly light, if I say so, especially in response to treason. Treason. The events of Yazloff ran through Mila's mind in an instant. A horror show, all in fast forward. The special officer that terrorized her friends, the red shadow that had betrayed them to him, and in the moment that shadow had revealed itself as Helga Malwarian, the woman she'd loved. It's surprising to me that I'm hearing from you about this, if I'm quite honest, Gertrude went on, carefully sipping her tea. When young Aiden first brought Malwarian to the Forgiveness Corps for arrest, you petitioned quite heavily to remain by her side, didn't you? You didn't seem to think the punishment was cruel and unusual then. She'd already heard nasty rumors at that point, about the upper echelons of the humanist faith, about the corruption in the Forgiveness Corps. Is it Forgiveness Corps or Forgiveness Corps?
Corps.
Okay. About what happened to inconvenient people when you took your eye off them. Despite everything, despite what Helga had done, Mila had simply found herself unable to leave her to that fate. And yet it had happened all the same. Mila put her own cup back down on the table with great force, Gertrude's feline ears twitching from the sudden loud noise. She summoned the courage she'd been building ever since she requested this meeting, and spoke. It's a matter of duration, she said. When Helga was first given to Dr. Cloud as a test subject for observation only, Gertrude interrupted, no actual testing has been performed on the woman. As a test subject, she insisted, it was under the terms that it would be for a limited amount of time. I've worked with Dr. Cloud for the last year, and I can confidently say he has no intention of giving up useful test subjects. He will continue to hold her on a permanent basis. Wait, has it been a year in setting?
About a year, yeah.
Holy shit. Permanent imprisonment as a human guinea pig without trial or parole. That is what I class as cruel and unusual. She didn't realize at first, but as she spoke, she slowly stood up in her seat, passion promoting movement. Her breath shaky, she slowly sat back down. But she already knew. All the passion in the world wouldn't sway these people. She'd left serendipity to escape the corruption of the medical profession there, but she understood now. It didn't matter where you went or how pure its ideals were. That would be without the apostrophe, by the way. Over time, institutions accumulated corruption as houses accumulated rot. It was inevitable. And the place she'd found herself was very old indeed. What you need to understand, Gertrude said softly, as if explaining the matter to a child, is that Dr. Cloud is one of the foremost genetic engineers in the galaxy. It's a miracle we have him now, rather than the Superbians. We need to keep pace with them when it comes to technology. If not, they will surely surpass us. If Dr. Cloud's price for his continued brilliance is a test subject or two, well, I'm afraid we must simply swallow our pride and acquiesce. Mila glared down at the table, her fists balled on its surface. So that's it then? She muttered, keeping her asleep to satisfy some mad scientist. I'd hardly call him mad, but yes, that's the gist of it. Unless you have something better to offer me? Uh-huh. Mila looked up, a foolish spark of hope flickering in her brain. Gertrude stared at her, unblinking. If there's something of equal value to Dr. Cloud you'd be willing to offer me, I'd be happy to consider it. You're from the UAP originally, aren't you? Your father was a famous surgeon there and worked with many prominent individuals. Perhaps in living with him, you yourself became privy to some confidential matters? I'd love to hear about them, if so. So in the end, that was why the cat had accepted this meeting, to try and restock some of her blackmail, to exchange one piece of dirty business for another. Well, Mila had nothing to tell her, and even if she did, she was far too sick to her stomach to speak. No, she replied, her voice dull. I don't know anything like that. Gertrude's ears flattened as she smiled sadly. Then I suppose we have nothing else to talk about, do we, dear? All right, popcorn.
When Antoine Musazi's drifting consciousness, victim to drunkenness and head trauma, finally came back into focus, he was already sitting in the back of a police car. This guy fell off.
No! Don't say that about him! He's gonna make a comeback!
This is like in TMZ. His head hurt, but that was no surprise. His hands were bound, but with ordinary handcuffs, no nether wire. Bouchard's blade snapped them with his Aether, but Antoine Musazi did not move. Even the idea of mustering that much effort seemed sickening right now. The streets gently moved past outside the window, the countless lights of the city forming an indistinct haze before Musazi's eyes, punctuated by the shadows of passing pedestrians. They weren't moving particularly fast, but he supposed they were surrounded by crowds. No doubt the officer didn't want to risk running anyone over. Musazi's headache eased just a little, and he glanced up to the front of the car. There was only one officer up there, a young man driving the vehicle, and every now and then he was giving Musazi a cautious glance back through the rearview mirror. Foolishness. An officer should always have a partner. I suppose...
Musazi, stop doing this to yourself.
I suppose I'm under arrest. Musazi spoke through a throat that felt like sandpaper, his cheek pressed against the cool window. They were entering an area of less people, and the vehicle was speeding up appropriately. Yep, the officer said, eyes on the road. Musazi blinked. By whom, if I may ask? Forgiveness Corps. That's humorless, isn't it? That's right. So Musazi had no opinion on that information. The questions left his mouth, and he received and understood the answers, but he simply and honestly did not care about them at all. If the officer had refused to answer, or even lied, he probably wouldn't have even registered it. The car slowed down and finally stopped. Had they arrived? No matter. Musazi simply continued to stare into the pitch black on the other side of the window. Damn it, the officer muttered. And then there was the sound of him lowering his window. Hey, he called out, you guys need to move this stuff. Footsteps, and then a gruff voice next to the car. For to Musazi, the whole world had become some kind of audio drama. A transport accident along the road, the gruff voice said. Got cargo scattered away, so we got all ahead and got approval from the Corps for a clean-up. They didn't tell you guys. The other side, of course they didn't. You got papers? Chuckle. Sure, here you go. Click.
This guy's voice.
For a split second, reflex took over, and that familiar sound jolted Musazi back into awareness, his gaze instantly moving to the sound's location. The barrel of a silenced pistol was peeking through the crack in the window, inches from the officer's face. Face pale, the young man slowly raised his hand in surrender. Okay now, he said carefully. Let's not... His head snapped back as he was shot between the eyes, and yet his body stayed in place, held up by his seatbelt. A meaty hand wormed its way through the open window, unlocking the door, opening it, and pulling the corpse free. Musazi had seen enough. Where reflex had revived him, self-preservation now moved him. With a flare of white aether, he smashed through the car door of his shoulder and snapped his handcuffs in one smooth motion. He skidded to a halt on the concrete outside, boots kicking up sparks beside him. His eyes flicked around, picking out details, gaining an instant understanding of the situation he'd found himself in. It was him and two men, short and stout types, with bushy moustaches and amused eyes. Both of them wore overalls and caps, the only difference being the colour. The one holding the officer's body was wearing red, and the other one was wearing blue. The amount of self-control it took not to have one wearing green.
I was about to say, is this like the Mario and Luigi?
In your mind, you should be picturing the Super Mario Brothers Super Show Mario, but twice.
Yes!
Adoy Musazi, right? The blue man spoke, scratching his moustache. Name yourselves, Musazi demanded, once again reaching for a sword that was not there. Why did you kill that man? Name's Solstice, the red man, Solstice said, lifting the dead officer up by the shoulders like he was a baby. That's my bro, Equinox. Equinox, can I take care of this thing? He shoved up the corpse in his grip. Oh yeah, go for it. Musazi opened his mouth to interrogate further, but was interrupted by a truly incandescent blaze of light that exploded out the officer's corpse, like the flash of a giant camera. When it cleared, Solstice's hands were empty, and no trace remained of the officer's corpse.
Summertime render ability!
Yeah.
I can't believe... Is there like a black outline?
Not even that. My bro's got a good power for clean-up, huh? Equinox grinned, hands on his considerable hips. Mine's not bad either, but for corpses, his is the best. Musazi adopted a martial arts stance, one hand held back in a fist, the other held forward as an open palm. He wasn't as confident with his fist as he was with a sword, but it would suffice. If it came down to it, he wouldn't go quietly. What do you want with me? He said, eyes hard. Equinox chuckled, exchanging a glance with his brother. Gee, bro, I think we might have come on a bit strong, don't you? Solstice nodded sagely. Seems to me we might have, bro, what with the murder and the incineration and whatnot. I bet he's real confused. Maybe he thinks we're here to kill him too. Wouldn't that be something, bro? Why, bro, I do think that would be something. Nothing could be further from the truth, but enough games. Muzazi barked, his aether coursing furiously around his body. "Tell me what it is you want from me, or I will not be responsible for my actions."
Ooh, is it tell me what it is, or tell me what is it?
New World Order.
Right before my eyes! How?
Okay, Solstice chuckled, reaching into the pockets of his overalls and fumbling around there. "There's someone who wants to talk to you real bad, buddy pal." "Oh, I know I got it somewhere." "Who?" Muzazi narrowed his eyes. "Who wants to talk to me?" Solstice's eyes lit up and he pulled something free from his pockets. "There we go," he exclaimed triumphantly. He tossed his prize onto the ground between himself and Muzazi. "There, check a look." He glanced down at the pin that had landed on the concrete before him. Needless to say, he recognised the logo. The wide, staring eye of a watchful bird, surrounded by 3 rings, one for each pillar of the Supremacy Society. This was the symbol of the Galactic Intelligence Division. Can I popcorn for this last little bit of you?
Sure. So these guys are Supremacy, or like at least hired by Supremacy?
It would seem so. We are familiar with the Galactic Intelligence Division. I will do a little JoJo lore recap here. They were the people who Helga was working for in Art 2.
Ooh, yeah, you guys thought Yaslov didn't matter? Fuck you! Mila's back! The Galactic Intelligence Division's back!
All along, Arc 2 was Arc 9 Part 1, basically.
Are you
Arc
serious?
9 Prologue, basically.
This bastard! You guys doubt his genius! The Einstein of writing! I don't even know what that means. The Einstein of writing. I'm gonna read now. Sorry, that was... Why did I say that? The building Muzazi was taken to was busier than he'd expected. It was some kind of barbecue restaurant, and already on the first day of the true meet, it was full to bursting, blazing with light and noise, the smell of ribs and meat pleasing to the nose. As he and his 2 companions made their way through the crowded venue, they received not so much as a suspicious glance. The back rooms of the establishment were more like what he'd expected. Solstice and Equinox led him down several... Is it Equinox or Equinox?
Equinox.
Solstice and Equinox led him down several dark and dusty hallways, through several password-locked doors, and finally... "Here he is," Equinox said. They shoved him into the back office itself. "Atoy Muzazi," a clear, calm voice said. "A pleasure to meet you at last." The man who'd spoken, sitting on a chair before a network of monitors, had an unusual appearance. Nearly everything about him was sheer white. His hair, his skin, the suit he wore. The only traces of color on his person were the cogitant blue of his eyes and the black of his lips and fingernails. He was like a sketch that hadn't been colored in, or perhaps an escaped mime. Hold on, have we finally found it? The cogitant that hacks?
Well, we have met this person before as well. This was Helga's boss in her flashbacks in Art 2.
No way. I don't remember that flashback at all. You're going to have to remind me of that. Gene Lyons, he introduced himself, smiling.
It's
Director
Jean
of the Galactic...
Lyons, actually.
Jean Lyons, he introduced... Am I doing the right voice?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
He introduced himself,
maybe
smiling.
a little less smug, I would say, maybe. He's a bit more sort of factual, business-like.
Jean Lyons, he introduced himself, smiling. Director at the Galactic Intelligence Division. How's that?
Yeah.
My apologies we have to meet in such an unusual venue, but we're currently conducting business here. We couldn't risk anything less discreet. Jean Lyons. The name rang familiar, yet Muzazi couldn't recall ever meeting this man. "You're a spy from the Supremacy?" he asked hoarsely. "What is it you want from me, then?" Lyons' tight smile widened slightly. "Well," he said, "while you're here, we figured you could help us with any number of things. Retrieving a GID asset lost to the humanists, eliminating some inconvenient individuals." His smile widened such that there was the slightest hint of a grin. "And bringing an end to the final church." Muzazi sighed until his lungs were empty, even if he was surprised by the sheer relief in the sound. His arms swayed limp by his sides, and it felt as if the world's greatest weight had been lifted from his back. Orders. Finally. There was the abyss he'd been looking for. Mila looked up, her face coldly illuminated by the light from the stasis module. That cruel light was the only illumination afforded to this room. Helga Malwarian floated freely in the blue stimulant fluid of the tank, a rebreather placed over her mouth allowing her oxygen. At first glance, it seemed she had no arms at all. But no, if you looked closer, her transparent limbs were simply refracting the fluid. It had almost been a year now. A year since she'd been knocked unconscious on the planet Yazlof and kept that way by this tank. An entire year had been added to the distance that already separated them. Tomorrow, this tank would be moved to the main laboratory again for further scans. Dr. Cloud was interested in the way Aether use interacted with genes, particularly when it came to scarents. He'd keep using Helga until there was nothing left to use. She placed a hand against the curiously warm glass of the tank, staring into the blue abyss beyond. Helga, she thought, I'll get you out of here. I promise. It was time to start making plans of her own. Dude, the fucking... This is like the One Piece of web serials. 7 arcs later. You thought Yazlof didn't matter, bitch? What's up? Helga's back. Mila's back. Musashi is dead inside. And I'm crying on the inside. God, this is actually the... Like, I swear, I know you joked like I'm your target audience, but you really do write, like, all the things I love most in literature. Like, that, like, spiral. Chef's kiss. Musashi trying to chase the dragon of the abyss. Ooh, baby. Tan, fucking masterpiece. Good job as always.
Thank you, I'm glad you like it.
How much Aetheral space do you have done by any chance?
I have half of the next chapter.
You have what?
Half of the next chapter, so I'm sorry I do not have another chapter for you yet.
No, it's okay. I can't do another one. I have something in like 30 minutes anyway. I was just curious. But man, I'm hooked on this series. I need more as fast as you can put it out, man. Oh, I need it in my veins. Give it to me. That Aetheral juice. No matter how much Aetheral space I consume, the abyss still looms in front of me.
Where's
so
my
far away,
abyss?
yet so close. Oh, it's okay, buddy. You'll find it one day.
Our abyss.
Oh, that would be another good fan fiction, the Musashi abyss. I have a question for you. Which Musashi do you think is more miserable? The Musashi in the Zanzinik timeline, or the Musashi in the Maria's Dead timeline?
Zanzinik.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it would be a much closer tie.
No, Zanzinik by far.
I guess being betrayed by your loved one is much harsher than your loved one having died.
Becoming like a genetic abomination.
Yeah, that too. What if he was ordered to become a genetic abomination? Zanzinik!
Well, he wouldn't have just done it if he wasn't already in this mental state.
Oh, fuck. Damn. Alright, well, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Oh, wait, no! What's your fun fact, first of all?
Fun fact, shit. Give me a question, and I'll give you a fun fact in response.
All my questions... Oh, actually, I wrote down an Aether question I was going to ask earlier. Let me see if it's, like, not a spoiler, or if it's even good for this. Because... Hold on, I had a question I was going to ask. Hold it up on my phone. Alright, so... You know, it's a common trope in anime that, like, a lot of times something that's older was, like, stronger, like magic or, like, stuff in Fate, right? Were the Aether abilities when Aether was first discovered stronger or weaker than they are now? Or was it, like, the same?
I would say they were less complex, maybe, because people didn't quite understand the mechanics behind it yet.
Gotcha. So probably weaker.
Weaker, probably, yes.
Yeah, because I was wondering, like, having my... Alright, cool. Alright, that's our fun fact. Is that Aether as a concept and, like, in practice has only gotten better over the years. And now you have to quickly give us the very, very brief recap of that flashback with Lions, because I don't remember that at all.
Well, basically, he had sort of picked Helga up from a planet where she was, like, a homeless kid, and he was, like, offering her, I'll give you medicine for your family, I will get you food, shelter, all that, you just have to work for me.
And she had to be a spy in the humanists.
Yes.
Okay. Alright, well thank you guys. Bye for real this time. Bye!